Hey everybody, welcome back to Lost Lens Caps, your photography podcast, where we talk all things photography. I'm Jacob Rice. I'm here with Jacqueline Cordova with Cycling Fanatic. How's it going?
Hi, Jacob. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. We waited a little while to get in here, so
I know.
I'm eager.
That's okay. That's okay. It was nice to see a new building on campus I've never seen. So
Yeah. So, Jacqueline is a sports photographer. Here are names. Can you tell me a little bit about being a sports photographer? What does being a sports photographer entail?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me when I think of myself as a photographer is a visual storyteller. It's very easy to, tell a story when you write it start to bottom, but it's very different to be able to capture a story in an image. So that's kind of what I think makes me a photographer. And with sports, I think what makes it even more unique is, everyone watches, the guy run in the end zone and the guy tackle, get a sack. But there's a big, huge difference of being the photographer on the field who can capture a lot of the little things that nobody else sees. And so when I think of myself as a sports photographer, those are the things that I think make me who I am. So, visual storyteller of all things beyond just the touchdown is the way I think of it.
That's a good way to start this. How did you get into, being that visual storyteller you talk about?
Yeah, so when I was hired as an intern at Cycling Fanatic, I think it was 2017, maybe it would have been. Yeah, I've been there for 6 years now, so kind of blurry looking back when I was a student. But it was one of those situations where I was hired to be the wrestling beat writer. That was my job. I was going to be the wrestling writer, nothing else. And once I started, it just was like, hey, we have an extra pass, and why not use it? Like, you're a student, you're wanting to learn. Why don't you go down there, maybe try out social media? Is kind of where Chris, my boss, was thinking was, here's an opportunity to do something extra we don't necessarily have. And so when I was down on the field, my first game, I very quickly realized Jack Trice has horrible service. So doing social media is very difficult. Mm-hmm. And so I was just kind of like, what can I do while I'm down here that's worthwhile, that can kind of bring something new that isn't something Cycling Fanatic has? And I was like, why don't I try photo? And being a student, I had access to cameras that we could rent. And so I just rented one. And, with the number one cardinal rule of a photographer, I just hit auto because I didn't know what I was doing. And I just started shooting. And I very quickly realized that I really enjoyed it. And it was very fun and unique. And it was challenging. And it just kind of stuck because Cycling Fanatic has never had a photographer. So it was something that I could provide that we were clearly missing, but I had a lot of room to learn. There wasn't like a threshold. There wasn't someone I was competing with. It was truly like, go out and make it your own. And so that's kind of where I started. And then as I realized, okay, this is something I want to continue to do, I worked on learning. So I was like, how do I shoot not on auto? And so I think it was Introduction to Photography was the class with Denny Chamberlain. And yeah, Denny absolutely learned so much in that class. And so I kind of started to get more comfortable to learn the settings and how to shoot, where's the best place to stand. Denny taught me a lot of that, where do you want to be because of where the sun's going to hit the field, and how to handle shooting an 11 o'clock game to a 6 o'clock game. And it was just it very became something that it felt very easy to me. When I think of myself as a creative, writing is very difficult. I really struggle because I just think too hard. Whereas with photography, it's been jumping in the deep end and you kind of already know how to swim type of thing. And so it's been, it just kind of, that's where it started. And it's just progressively become a really big part of why a lot of people probably know who I am at Cycling Fanatic is because of my photography. So it kind of started as why don't you just do something? And then it just became now a very staple thing that I do every Saturday for football. And I do it for basketball occasionally and every single wrestling duel that I'm at.
Yeah, when I first came here to Iowa State as a freshman, first game, the UNI game, I saw you out there and I started talking to you. Followed you on Instagram. I was like, whoa, crazy good photos. It's insane. And yeah, now I'm a junior. Yeah, it's pretty crazy seeing you every year on the field.
Which is crazy because I feel like I always look at your pictures and I'm like, he is so talented. Like, I wish I could shoot sometimes the way you do. So, you know, I think that a lot. I feel very like encouraged and like challenged by so many of the younger photographers, like your demographic, because you guys are just so good at it. Like, I feel like I was a baby deer for like 3 years learning how to walk, and I feel like you seem really, really natural at it.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Not to hype you up on your own podcast.
But yeah, so were you a journalism student? Because you took Denny's class.
Yes, I started in English, quickly realized that that was not a good idea, and I switched to journalism my junior year. So I actually started late. I realized journalism was more of my vibe junior year, and then I ended up graduating after 5 years. And journalism was the place. I kind of teetered with PR at the time, and there was like a guest speaker who was like, the best thing you're going to have to offer is your writing skills, because a lot of people in other majors won't have that. So I was like, okay, I'll stick with it. And then as I, went through more classes, I realized there was just a lot more to journalism than just writing. So photojournalism class was probably my favorite class I took of all the classes. So
yeah, I took a 310 last year, and now I'm in like a food photography class with Denny, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's called Focus on Food, and the entire class is go out and take photos or do stories about people who have relationships with food. And that's always, it's weird, but I love it.
Well, I heard there was like a mobile photography class at one point.
Yeah, I think it's not this fall, but it'll be in the spring, available in the spring. And all you need is your phone.
I would say classes have evolved and iPhones are just getting fancier.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't attack Samsungs. Samsungs are also getting fancy.
I mean, the iPhone, what is it, 15? It has like a double the amount of megapixels.
Yeah.
They had to give like a warning to buyers to get the higher storage because the photos are going to be so much higher quality, so much more storage.
I can't even imagine. I can't.
Yeah. I'm content with my iPhone 10. Like, I don't need the iPhone 15 with the like 36 megapixel camera.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned football and wrestling. What has been your like favorite in this past like 2 to 3 years? Favorite sporting event you've attended?
Oh, you know what? This is easy. It has to be the NCAA Wrestling Championships. I went to my first one ever just this past March. It was in Tulsa, so I got to do 2 back-to-back trips to Tulsa. Because for people who don't know, Big 12 championships for wrestling are always in Tulsa. And so I had heard so many stories about how incredible this sporting event is. And I just been like starry-eyed waiting for the time that I would get my opportunity, and this was it. And particularly Friday night of NCAAs, it's a 4-day event, and Friday night's kind of where guys are officially knocked out or they're moving on. And it was just like it's just really crazy, because if you follow wrestling or if you go to a wrestling duel on a one-off, they don't tend to be super packed. It's not like super high, like the way you feel in a football stadium, with that many fans. And in this one there is, it's like filled to the brim with wrestling fans, and, they're a whole different breed. So they're going nuts, and you have like 6 matches going at once. So it's like really, really high energy. And as a photographer, it's like you really have to focus on what you're supposed to be photographing while there's like 100 different things going on at once. Like, it is just really insane how fast your body's moving. And so it's like a challenge as a photographer to not only like know where I'm supposed to go, because I have to keep track of so many guys at once. And that Friday night in particular, it was the night that Spencer Lee, top wrestler in all of wrestling, Iowa's #1 guy, lost. So it was just like the craziest experience of like, I'm trying to shoot my guy, but then you have like the #1 guy in the sport just lost like 2 feet away from you. So it was just like the craziest experience to just feel and work. It's like, our whole thing is we try so hard to focus on our work. You're not really the score doesn't matter. What matters is what you're shooting. But like, that night was like the first time where I was working where I couldn't. Like, my face was like a million miles an hour of emotions, which usually during any sporting event, my face is pretty stone cold. I'm pretty focused. And I couldn't do that night. It was too crazy.
Yeah, I mean, wrestling with 6 matches going on at once, that sounds way crazier than a game at Jack Trice. Like,
Definitely.
yeah, like you were saying, you have to like match the energy kind of thing. Like at Jack Trice, playing football, it matches up with like the fans. So if the fans are going crazy, it's either a good thing or a bad thing. There's like no doubt about it. But with, like you were saying, 6 people at once, people are crying, people are screaming, people are going crazy, all at different corners of the room. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine that. I've only photographed wrestling like 2 or 3 times, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever photographed because the mats at Iowa State, like they're red, they're deep red.
Yeah, the colors.
The reflection of their faces makes them look like their like entire face is red. I was like struggling so hard with my white balance trying to figure that out. And like the timing of it, I did not expect wrestling to be such a fast game sometimes. Like sure it's like slow when they're doing whatever they're doing, but then they have those random moments where they're flipping each other or they're having
flurries.
I'm like, huh? I just missed the biggest play of the game, whatever it's called.
Move moment.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, and I think I'm just like I'm a naturally emotional person, so like when I'm sitting down there and I do for like 2 seconds just put my camera down, it's like great. I just missed what I didn't know was coming. That is very true. It moves super, super fast. And it's like, you got to pick and choose. Am I looking at the coaches or am I looking at the match? And yeah, it's funny you bring up the color of the mat because when it was yellow, that was my nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
When the wrestling room was yellow, it was like yellow to the brim. It was horrible. It was horrible to shoot. It washed everyone out. It was so hard to edit. I couldn't even use like my my filters now, like the color scheme that I like to stick to. I couldn't do it because it was just so harsh to shoot in. But they changed it now. It's not a yellow wrestling room anymore.
They're getting a new one, right? Like a whole new
Yeah,
facility.
it's all the renovations. So
oh my gosh.
It looks like there's a lot of windows, which I think will be, again, a blessing and a curse depending the time of day we get to be in there. So.
Yeah, because if it's like midday to sunset, just bright light coming straight through there.
Just ruin it all. Yep. Yeah. Well, I guess not ruining it. There's a sweet spot. Yeah. But.
So, what sports have you covered? You said wrestling and football. Have you done anything else with Iowa State?
So I have photographed basketball. Basketball's a little harder. Just because, they have limited space. There's only so many photographers that are going to get a spot. And so we kind of worked it out where I'll do 1 or 2 games a season. So I have dabbled in men's basketball and women's basketball. But other than that, I'm trying to think if I've done any other sports. And no, I don't think so. I photographed little kids playing soccer for my boss. I photographed his kids playing soccer, but that's really it, just basketball, wrestling, and football. And I did a tiny bit of gymnastics when wrestling and gymnastics did the Beauty and the Beast, but that was very difficult to do. I kind of had to focus all my energy on wrestling, so I just stole a couple shots when I could turn around.
Yeah, wait, I didn't even know what it was. I saw did they switch? They switched what they're doing, the events? Like wrestlers will do gymnastic stuff and gymnastics will do wrestling stuff?
No, that'd be kind of fun though. No, so they call it the Beauty and the Beast, which I think is pretty clever, but they take basically the basketball court and they split it in half. And gymnastics holds their meet on one side and then wrestling has their duel on the other.
Oh, okay.
And
that makes more sense.
And they did it simultaneously.
Yeah.
Which is what kind of was nuts because where they placed us as photographers, we had our backs turned to gymnastics. And so we'd be sitting there watching this match, and then suddenly, Luke Combs is blasting behind us. And I've never been to a gymnastics meet, so I was like, they do their, I don't know what to call it. I don't know the terms. Yeah, their routine to Luke Combs.
Yeah.
Or, the next one would be, a rap song. And it was just, such a very difficult, thing to do, especially when you can't see. Because it's like you said, it happened so fast. I couldn't take a split second to turn around and see what was happening because I had to focus on the match that was happening. And the fans were up, higher because they have to close down the floor. And so it was just, again, you were bowled in because it was a lot. It was really packed. So it was very interesting. But yeah, that's what I have photographed.
Yeah, I mean, with gymnastics, I think last year they did like a Baby Shark one. So
Oh,
like
really?
just every match they had, home match, there was the one girl that did Baby Shark.
Oh,
And then, like you
my.
said, Luke Combs, other country stars, and then hip hop, that kind of stuff. Gymnastics is always it's a weird combination of songs.
I know it's interesting how you get yourself amped up because you get so used to like heavy rap music tends to be what they do at most sporting events. But
Yeah. So you mentioned
yeah,
you do a lot of stuff with the wrestling. Can you talk about the timeline of you getting into wrestling from that rider beat position to where you're at now?
yeah. So when I was hired as an intern, I think I probably surprised Chris, who is my boss, because he gave me the option between wrestling and women's basketball. But I had been a wrestling manager in high school. So like I took stats every single meet. I spent my days at tournaments. So like this was where I was most familiar, but I'd never been a sports writer. So it was one of those where I knew wrestling, I didn't know how to write. And so when I started, I just sat at the media table. I just took notes, wrote my story from the press conference, and that was that. And as I got into photography, I realized I don't want to sit. Like I can't sit in one place, which is like the blessing of doing things like football and wrestling because you don't have to sit in one spot when you're doing your job. And so I took it upon myself to decide I was done sitting at the media table. I don't want to tweet through it. Like I'll just tweet off my phone is what I've been doing. So I went from just sitting at the media table and covering the duel from that perspective to now I sit down on the floor. I'm mat side taking pictures. I'll catch clips if I can of anything that's happening. I just kind of try to read the vibe, and if it's something that I think will be more valuable in a video, I'll take a video. And then I try and tweet off my phone as much as I can what's happening since people rely on me for scoring. And then once all of that's said and done, I'll go to the press conference. And now I have grown to be more comfortable in my own skin as a reporter, and I'll ask questions during the press conference. And then, once all's said and done, it's like I have to edit all my pictures to create a gallery, take care of any social media stuff. So like pushing out pictures, any videos I took, I'll write a story, and then I'll release video of the press conference.
Jack of all trades.
I'm doing it all, one-man band, as they used to say in news, and I think there's still one-man bands in
Oh, for
news.
sure.
So that's kind of what I do there, and in the week to week, it's like you have Tuesday, Wednesday availability. So it's again, you get to meet with the coaches and select wrestlers, and then I'll interview them. I went from like being absolutely terrified of ever even like speaking in the room to now like dresser will call me out if I'm too quiet. He'll be like, "What are your questions now? Like, where are your questions at?" So it's like I've grown over the past 6 years because ultimately that's what I wanted to do was wrestling, and it's been super fun getting more comfortable. I think the advantage of wrestling reporters have kind of rotated in and out of the room. I can officially say since I started, I am the one constant for Kevin Dresser, who's the head coach. I started with 2 reporters who were there as beat writers as well, and they've both moved on to different opportunities. So I'm officially, I think, other than the Daily, whoever is going to cover it, it's mostly been me who's now there consistently for the past 6 years since Kevin Dresser got hired, which is like a fun little thing to feel, I guess. And a big advantage to kind of, obviously I want more people to cover it, and that's ultimately the goal. We want the sport to grow. But trips to Tulsa, I mean, it's hard to find something like that if you're a newspaper or a student paper and you have to allocate your resources elsewhere. I've gotten very fortunate where Fairway has become a sponsor of the work I do. So they sponsor all the stories, all the work I'm doing, and now a podcast that I have at Cyclone Fanatic that's strictly wrestling that I do with Ben Visser, who used to work for the Gazette covering Iowa State athletics. They make it so I can go to things like Big 12 championships and NCAA wrestling championships. So, like, I'm the only person there, which is awesome when you think of photography. Like, with football, there's like 30 of us, there's 30 of us fighting our way to get unique shots of the same thing.
Exactly.
And being in Tulsa, I got this really unique opportunity to be like the only person who's getting certain shots other than, the Iowa State wrestling team's direct photographer and videographer. And so it started off as like the small thing to now I'm doing like a million other things. And it's been really fun because I've also just gotten an advantage, to build these relationships with this team. I get to, I've gotten to know the 3 coaches super well. I get to do one-on-one interviews with them all the time. If it's a weekly availability where there's conflicts for everybody else, but there isn't for me, I get a whole hour, with the team myself, which has been really, really fun and an opportunity that I don't think many can get. So it's just fun. It comes back to that storyteller aspect where I get to tell the Iowa State wrestling story from so many different angles that not many other people are doing. That's just not a thing that very many people do. You're either doing photography or you're the videographer or you're the writer sitting at the media table. So it's been very fun. I'm very, very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about college wrestling just in general. And I guess another thing I'll say is, peers, being at NCAAs and being at Big 12s, it was like an opportunity to be around other photographers who do the same thing that I don't always get to do here.
Yeah.
And that was so much fun. That was probably one of my favorite things, was sitting in this hallway with all the other photographers and videographers. I don't get to do that very often because with football, it's like I get pulled in to doing video after football, and I get pulled into supporting our writers for our social media. And so it was fun to be able to just sit and exist with other photographers and see how they capture the sport. Like, because it's like the way you challenge me with football, I get to finally find those people with wrestling. So
Yeah, I mean, that's like the best thing about traveling for any sport is just meeting new people. Like just this past week, the Daily went to Oklahoma for the Oklahoma game, and we got to meet all the photographers out there. And it was just like, I've been following you for like 3 years. I know you.
Exactly.
I know your photos. Yeah, and then going back to what you were talking about, NCAA, you being the only person from Iowa State out there. I remember it was during NCAA basketball or Big 12 basketball maybe, and I was like scrolling through Twitter like redoing everything, like trying to find like, what's your results? I'm waiting for Jacqueline's photos.
Oh, I love that. That makes me feel good. Yeah, it was, and that was the fun thing. I was like, well, instead of just like, because you have to be able to read the room, right? Like at the end of the day, the guys were in Kansas City, and I don't even know where the NCAA games for basketball were anymore, but like those guys were filling the Cyclone Fanatic feed. So I was like, how can I share what's happening in a way that it blends in a good way? So I was hustling, editing pictures exactly after their matches. So I could just tweet like, here's 4 photos I took of their match with the score.
There we go.
So that's kind of how I decided to do that, which was really, really beneficial because everyone got to see something visual, which attracted them to read the score. And like I said, it was a hustle because when you have 8 mats to cover, I had my little like adapter, and it was just like, okay, this match is done. Time to shove this in the adapter, power walk across the arena. So yeah, it's a good time. And one of the pictures I sent you is from that. And that's kind of the story of why I really, there's more to it, but that was like a supporting factor, was that I know nobody else got the shot.
Speaking of that, let's go into our next segment. Reviewing favorite photos. I don't even know what to call it, but we're going to talk about Jacqueline's favorite photos that she's taken throughout these, what is it, past like 3 or 4 years of photos, or does it go back further than that?
No, it goes back to 2018.
2018.
That's the oldest picture I sent.
All right, cool. All right, so the first photo we have here today is a photo of Breece Hall in a red jersey, white pants, white shoes, with his white helmet under his hand, kneeling down, looking like he's praying pregame. Tell me a little bit about the photo.
So this is the first picture I took with my new camera. So this is a big thing. When I started shooting, when you decide to do it, for the small company, it takes a little time to get funding for that type of equipment that they've never needed before. And so for context, when I started shooting, my own camera was a hand-me-down, and it was a Canon T3i, Canon Rebel. I think you can buy it now under $500 on Amazon. Yeah. So this is the first picture I took after Chris bought me a new camera. It's a Canon Mark V. I had been eyeing that camera for years. Like, I wanted it so bad. And so this was the first picture I took with it, and it is so crisp. It's so clean. I love this picture. And I also love it because I feel like a big thing that became very popular for our like our subscribers or, people who follow Cycling Fanatic was the pictures I would capture of the players, assuming praying, when right before kick. And I got to capture this quick moment with Breece Hall, and it's very difficult to find yourself perfectly centered with one of the most popular players on the team because there's like 30 of us fighting to get the shot. And I just happened to find myself in the end zone with Breece by myself with no other photographers. So I just got him perfectly centered. He's perfectly in the shot. Like nothing's cut off on him, which happens often when you're fighting a lot of other photographers. And it just and it blew up on Twitter. People loved it. I had people text me that it was their phone background. So it was just one of those pictures that just gave me butterflies where I was like, I did that.
I mean, yeah, with sports photography, my favorite thing is I prefer pregame just because you get so much more emotion in there.
Right.
Like they're buddying with friends if they're in the intense pregame hype ritual kind of thing, or in these moments where they're praying. I don't know. I prefer the emotion of it rather than the action of it.
I do too.
Being a photographer is all about capturing those raw emotions.
Right.
And also, it's Breece Hall. Shout out to Breece Hall. Hope you're listening.
Yeah,
he's
Breece.
Probably not.
Well, he's out there, he's doing the things. He's a pro now, and I get to know that I took some pretty sweet pictures of him. So
yeah,
it's a feel-good moment.
Have you had any former players reach out to you about hey, can I get this photo? Or while they were still playing, maybe?
Never to the point where they're hey, send it. They probably, if they want it, they probably already asked. Charlie Kolar is one of the ones that was the kindest about those pictures. One of the other pictures I have, Breece Hall did retweet it recently. So that one. So this one, would you you want me to describe it, or you want to hit that?
I'll have you describe it. Go for it.
So Breece Hall is walking down the field. It's during, I think it's actually during maybe after they came out of the tunnel. So they're just kind of doing a quick warm up before they kick. And again, it was one of those moments where I happened to be positioned perfectly centered with him, and he's walking towards me. He's wearing a white helmet, black jersey, white pants, and it happened that the way his thigh pads, he has a cross on one of them, and is it a cyclone? I can't see it.
Yeah, it's the cyclone bugle shaped kind of thing.
Yep, and his head is perfectly tilted down to where he almost looks in the zone, evil Breece ready to kill the competition. And so with this picture, it was more of I never want to have ego with what I do, but I don't know if you ever have this, but there's moments where I'll see pictures I take and I'm I took that. Exactly. I took that. And that's how I feel about this picture.
You have a little moment in the field oh my gosh.
Yeah,
this is the best photo. I'm posting this as soon as
right,
the game's over.
I am so good at my job. Do people see me right now? And that's how I feel about this picture. And I tweeted it recently. I think it was Lightroom tweeted what's your that moment picture or something. And I quoted it and I tagged Breece in it, and he retweeted it, which made me feel so good. I was he won't retweet it if he doesn't like it. So I hope Breece saved it and printed it or something. But I do love this picture, and that was I did that moment.
That's awesome. I love how too he lines up perfectly in color blocks. So his knees start right at the green, his uniform starts with the crowd, and then his helmet is the sky. I don't know, it's cool symmetry kind of thing.
Yeah, it was. I'm telling you, it was a perfect moment of just everything centered. So I just love it.
All right, so this photo we've got two players. I think the one is Charlie Kolar, and who is number 5 over here?
That's his brother, John.
Oh, John Kolar. Okay. They're doing a little dap up kind of thing while kneeling down on the ground. Pre-game, you can tell because they're not super sweaty yet. And
don't have helmet hair.
Yeah, the crowds are full, wearing their black jerseys. Nice little brotherly moment.
Yeah. So again, the praying pictures pre-game are very popular. People just really love them. That was something I take really great pride in, is that some of the compliments I've gotten over the years is that people feel that I help them connect with the players outside of the plays. And this one in particular, like I said, I have a different Charlie Kolar picture that he's walking into the mist, the fog that they do out of the tunnel. But this one is more emotional. John was graduating, this was their days were numbered on the field together. And again, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And he actually reached out because his mom ended up printing it and hanging it.
Oh.
So he wanted me to know that had happened and how much it meant to his family. And so that's one of my favorite parts is what the pictures mean to other people. So to know that his family cared about it so much, and it created this relationship with Charlie and I, where now every time he sees me, he gives me a big hug, because it's I became oh yeah, the photographer that took those pictures. And so it's just one of those fuzzy feel good moments where I did exactly what Denny taught me in class, capture the emotions that people can't see. And how often do people get to say they shared the field with their brothers? Not too often. And I got to capture it in this very vulnerable moment where, they'll never be able to do this again. And so it was just one of those, I captured an emotion that you won't see again, but now it lives in a picture. This is the one from 2018. Will Greer gets sacked before he can get the end zone. The players kind of hurled everywhere, and it was great. And this is when I was learning. I was still very uncomfortable. I'm telling you, I'm shooting on a T3i. My lens is a 70-300. I have no idea I don't know even what it is. Like I said, it was a hand-me-down for me. But this was the first picture that I took that I was okay, I think I can do this. I think I can be good at this if I just keep trying. Because leading up to this game, this is the West Virginia game in 2018, I believe. I think they stormed the field that game.
They did.
And so it was one of those where leading up to it, again, I felt like a newborn deer out there. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really feel like I had owned a place on the field like the other photographers. And when I got home that night and I saw this picture, I was no, I can do it. I can do it. And so I actually had this hung up on my wall for a long time. I ended up switching them out to rotate them out, but I always think of this picture when I think of where I started. And even just look at the editing. It's so heavy and
grungy.
Yes, it is. I was what I was going for, I guess. But it just, this is the one picture I think of when I look back at old pictures that I can stomach looking at, and I'm no, I figured it out. So
we actually recently talked on the Sports Weekly podcast about this game, about how West Virginia was a top 10 ranked team at the time, and they stormed the field afterwards. So cool connections.
Yeah, it was. I remember being down there, and I texted one of my coworkers, and I was because when I'm down there, it's just one of those where I describe it as blacking out. Nothing matters. I'm so focused on one thing at a time, and it would I forget there was a timeout, and I was oh my gosh, they're going to storm the field, and I'm standing on it. So it was one of those moments where it was holy crap.
I had that same moment when Iowa State rushed the field after beating Oklahoma my freshman year. And that was when the Brock Purdy clip of him standing it happened. I was I was right there. I was whoa.
Yeah, it's definitely terrifying, honestly.
Oh yeah, I was worried for my camera gear because I had a lens over by the bench somewhere, and I was I hope no one tramples it. Oh my God.
That was ballsy of you.
Yeah, it really was.
This picture is from NCAAs. It was from David's championship match. And, this is a very high energy here. It is all stakes are on the line. There's no more. This is it. And the reason why I love this picture is not because of David, who's not really in the shot. It's his waist below, and Keegan O'Toole has his leg caught. But it's the framing of it. As I've gotten more comfortable as a photographer, I've really tried to work I don't have other lenses. I don't have any way to get a wider shot. I have a 70-200. That's what I have to work with. So how do I make myself unique? Well, framing. How can I position myself differently from everyone else? And in this moment, during this match, I have probably 80 different versions of this picture, because I wanted so badly to perfectly frame all three coaches inside the wrestlers somehow. And I did it. I did it somehow with their legs. The way David's leg is up, which is not a good thing because the coaches aren't happy. David's probably not happy, but it didn't matter because I got to get them perfectly divided up into three. They're all looking forward. They all have a different expression. and you have enough of the action where you can tell what's happening, right? You know David's losing. You know his leg's up. You can tell Keegan O'Toole's dominating here. And I just love it. It's a unique shot. It's not a shot that anyone was probably like, I'm going to get a picture of the coaches framed in the wrestlers. So
I love, too, that you can tell it's Mizzou because of the tiger stripe kind of stuff, in which Mizzou and Iowa State go hard against each other. Like,
they do.
They're big rivals. Or not official rivals, I don't think, in wrestling.
Not officially, but it sure feels like it at this point. So this one is Logan Schumacher is at the center of the mat. It's during intros, so it's completely dark except like there's 2 spotlights I think they use. And it perfectly captures him at the center of the mat. So it's just his silhouette. It's a silhouette of his back. And this picture still hangs on my wall today. It's in my living room. And the reason why I picked it is because this is my favorite picture I've ever taken, it's so simple. But again, as I've gotten more comfortable, a big thing that I really struggled with was just figuring out like how to get those shots. And I always thought the way to get the better shot was being like in the action on top of them. But I actually took this one sitting at my media seat up at the top. So I'm on what's considered the general concourse of Hilton instead of being on the floor. And this was like the first time where I like stepped back and I was like, okay, it's about perspective. Like I don't need to be in the heart of it. I don't need to be where every single photographer is. And I used to feel that. I used to be like, where are all the photographers? I need to go stand with them. And this picture kind of made me realize that that's not the case at all. I don't want to stand where everybody is because you're not going to get the unique moment. And I also, what I really love about it is that it's Logan Schumacher. If you ask someone who's not a huge wrestling fan, but they know enough, they probably don't even remember Logan. They probably don't. And I really try my best to not put all my focus on the stars. So, like, I don't want to give David Carr all my energy and neglect everybody else, you know, and I do it in football too. If it's a good picture, it's a good picture. I don't care if it's not the quarterback or the star running back, you know. I want to make sure that everybody is captured equally.
Yeah, if it evokes emotion, it's a good photo.
Yeah, and again, it brings back up the way that I'm able to connect with people over the pictures I take. Logan Schumacher's parents were super kind. They wrote me the sweetest thank you note about how they were really grateful for me giving Logan some attention and capturing, you know, what few moments he had where he earned that starting spot after someone was injured. You know, it's like those guys that you have to take extra time to get to know because, again, he wasn't the star. Logan knows that. And he could have lost his job in a snap of a finger. But, you know, I was able to capture this one moment for him. And so that means a lot to me. And these also just became my favorite pictures to take of wrestling is like the spotlight pictures because they're just so cool. So that's the story behind that one.
Yeah, when I first saw you post this, or I think it was pinned to your Twitter or something like that for a while.
It was for a while.
I remember seeing that. I was like, wow, how do I get that shot? It's definitely one of those where I'm like, I don't even think I want to recreate this. This is like a once in a lifetime kind of photo. I love it.
So Tyrese Hunter, sore subject for Iowa State fans. So you said wrestling was the most difficult for you. Basketball is the most difficult for me because I don't know why, I just feel like I'm in a box when I'm sitting in one spot and I can't move. And I can't work, like I have to work with what lens I have. Whereas like everybody else has like 2 cameras or they have all these different lenses. I don't have that. So I always really, really struggled. Like I remember the first time I shot basketball, I left like so disappointed in myself. I was like, I suck at this. And this game in particular, it was like a non-conference game. So it's not like a big important game or anything. It was just a game I wanted to try and get photos of the guys. And I got this picture of Tyrese going to the hoop and getting the shot. And I looked at the picture and I was like, wow, okay, maybe I can do this. So it was just like, it was one of those moments where I was finally able to conquer what I felt so like beat up by. Like I just could not figure out how to shoot basketball. And I was so mad because everything else had felt like it'd come easy. And this one just would not. And I finally figured it out. And I got some pretty cool shots that night of all the players. And This one in particular, because it was like everybody wants to get the shot of the guy dunking the ball. And I finally got to say that I did that. And so this was like one of those milestones where I finally like grew comfortable being at basketball games. Because at first I really dreaded the idea of going back because I hated the feeling of failing. But you just got to go back and try again, and it's okay.
Yeah, failing is a common vocabulary for photographers. You got to fail until you're not perfect, I guess, until you improve. Right. Yeah.
And it's like you always think you're going to get a perfect shot, or you think you're going to go in and get like the money maker, and you might not always do that. You might just get nice shots that tell a good story of the game, but sometimes you'll get one that's just like a little extra special. And that's how I felt about this one, because I felt like I finally figured out this one hurdle that I couldn't get over. So,
oh, I'm hoping to see more at basketball this year, I guess.
Yeah, let's
maybe
hope
more
so.
than just the 2 games. Who knows?
We'll see. We'll see if oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name. He'd be mad at me. The SID.
Matt Ryan?
No.
Schultz?
No. He does football.
Ryan Workman?
Ryan
Workman, there we go.
Ryan and I did wrestling together. So after he left to go do basketball, I was sad. But yes, if Ryan Workman gives me more passes, I'll be there.
There we go. Is there anything you want to say to the viewers as your final little statement kind of thing?
I feel like when it comes to photography, you just can't be afraid. It's like one of those cliche, like you got to make yourself uncomfortable. Like on the sidelines, I always tell myself you can't get up and run away because it looks like a player might hit you. Sometimes they might. But like you never know what shot you're going to get. I bet you so many of the shots that I've gotten in the past, had I moved, I would have missed it. Like those ones of Breece Hall, I would not have had those had I moved even an inch. So you just gotta embrace the unknown there and just find the right spot. I
love
think.
That.
So
that's great. Everyone, go check out Jacqueline Cordova's socials. They'll be in the description below. Thanks for listening to Lost Lens Caps. Bye.